During an investigation into a criminal matter, CCTV footage can prove to be an invaluable tool for investigators, since it can help identify the people involved. But in many cases, even the existence of such footage is not enough. In some cases, go cold for years or even decades, while others may never be solved. Museums are supposed to be places where we can see exhibits and artifacts from hundreds and even thousands of years ago, giving us an idea of how people lived a very long time ago. But they're often also targets for thieves who are looking to quickly line their pockets. One of the most famous museum heists in history took place on the 21st of August, 1911, when the famous Mona Lisa painting was stolen from the Louvre Museum in Paris, France. An amateur painter was the first person to notice that it was gone, but despite immediately notifying the museum's security staff, it could not be located. At one point, a poet, Guillaume Apollinaire, was arrested, and the tycoon J.P. Morgan was also suspected of the crime, but they were eventually both cleared. An ex-employee of the Louvre was found to have stolen the painting, and he told investigators that he simply hid it under his shirt after removing it from its frame, and he walked out unnoticed. He spent 6 months in jail for the offense. Then there was the heist of the Museum of Natural History in New York, which took place on the 29th of October, 1964. 3 surfers named Jack Murphy, Alan Cunn, and Roger Clark, all hailing from Miami, planned the heist for weeks while staying in a penthouse in a Manhattan hotel. On the day of the theft, Murphy and Cunn climbed over the museum fence, scaled up a fire escape, swung through a window via a rope, and entered the building while Clark remained outside to keep watch. They managed to walk away with the Star of India sapphire, the DeLong Star ruby, and the Midnight Black sapphire. They were tracked down and taken into custody just 2 days later, and each was sent to prison for about 2 years. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist is one of the most famous heists in all of history. It took place on the 18th of March, 1990 in Boston, where 2 men dressed as police officers entered the building and told the security guards that they'd received a call about some type of disturbance. They then bound the guards' hands and stole more than 30 pieces of art. The culprits have never been identified, and a $10 million reward is still on offer to anyone who can help bring the thieves to justice. While these heists seem like something out of a crime novel or movie, they are very real, as is evidenced by just such a crime that took place at the Drents Museum in Arson in the Netherlands on the 25th of January, 2025. At around 3:45 that morning, police in the city received a call from a member of the public who stated that they'd heard the sound of an explosion nearby. It didn't take long for them to figure out that the blast had come from the museum, but by the time they had arrived there, the heist had already been completed. The blast was the result of explosives that had been used to gain entry into the building, as could be seen from the CCTV footage that was later released to the public, and luckily no one was injured. Investigators briefed the public on what had happened, stating that they suspected several people were involved, given the short time that it took them to make off with their ill-gotten goods. Further CCTV footage revealed that 3 people were involved in the heist, but their faces were obscured from the museum's cameras thanks to hoods that they were wearing over their heads. The items that were stolen were not very valuable, but a 2.2-pound, 2,500-year-old gold helmet, called the Helmet of Cotafinesti, was stolen and is considered to be a Romanian national treasure that was on loan to the museum at the time. 4 royal gold bracelets dating back to around 50 BC were also taken, and together these items would get a lot of money on the black market. The museum's general director expressed his shock and stated that the robbery marked a dark day for the Drents Museum. The helmet has been called priceless by experts since it's still in remarkably good condition considering its age. It contains designs including the likeness of mythical creatures and the sacrifice of a ram by an unknown person. It's also said to have protected its wearer from evil during battle, thanks to the design of the eyes on the front of the piece. It was found by a young boy in the 1920s while he was herding sheep on a hillside and soon became a national treasure. The investigation into the heist was undertaken by the Romanian police, representatives of the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Justice, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But it didn't take long for the 3 suspects to be tracked down, and they were taken into custody. Two of the thieves were named as Douglas Chesley Winterstate and Bernard Zeman, and members of the public have been asked to come forward with any knowledge of their movements after the heist took place. By doing this, they're hopeful that someone will remember seeing the trio, giving investigators a chance at finding the loot which has not yet been recovered. A woman was also arrested in connection with the robbery, but her name has not yet been made public. They've also stated that more people may be involved in the heist, but this remains speculation at this point. For now, the whereabouts of these precious items remain unknown, and only time will tell if they'll ever be recovered. Arson is a very serious and very dangerous crime that can cause a lot of damage in a very short time. Some instances where people commit such an act include fraudulent insurance claims, protests, or in some cases when they want to get revenge against someone with whom they had a falling out. In one arson case that occurred in May of 2024, a Berlin city hall was damaged when protesters set fire to it and scrawled graffiti on the outside walls. A witness who came forward stated that they saw two people running away from the building, and soon after, a room on the building's ground floor burst into flames. No one was injured in the attack, but it was thought to have been a political statement concerning tensions with Gaza at the time. The authorities were eventually able to extinguish the blaze, but the culprits were never identified. That same year, 3 people were arrested after they set fire to several asylum seeker accommodation centers in Dublin, Ireland. It was considered somewhat of a miracle that no one was injured during the blaze, but luckily everyone living in the building at the time managed to escape before the fire grew too large. Surprisingly, the 3 suspects, aged between 30 and 50 years old, were released by the Gardaí without any charges being brought against them, and they've not revealed why this decision was made. Then, on the 26th of November, 2024, an investigation was launched after a series of arson attacks that took place in Merseyside, England. At around 9:35 a.m. that morning, Merseyside police received reports that the front door of a house in Birkenhead had been set alight. The man who owned the house was inside at the time, but he managed to escape without injury. Witnesses described seeing 2 men, both wearing hooded sweatshirts, walking around the area shortly before the fire was set, but no suspects were ever arrested. In a separate incident, 2 men wearing balaclavas were seen leaving a house on Gladstone Road after they put a combustible liquid through the house's letterbox before setting it alight. Once again, no one was injured, and it was uncertain whether the 2 incidents were related. But whatever the case may be, these 2 men also made a clean getaway, despite CCTV cameras in the area being checked by investigators. In another case from 2024, police in Canberra, Australia, were able to retrieve CCTV footage of an arson attack that occurred in a barber shop in the city on the 6th of July. In that case, one of the 2 arsonists got more than he bargained for when his plans went awry. After responding to reports of a fire, investigators checked the barbershop's CCTV footage, and what they saw shocked them. 2 people, presumed to be male, could be seen riding their bicycles to the shop, called the Goldblade Barbers, which is located on Hiberson Street. Both of the culprits were wearing helmets at the time, making it impossible for investigators to identify them, though a description of the clothes that they were wearing has been made available to the public, in hopes that someone will recognize these items and come forward with the names of the 2 arsonists. In the footage, the pair can be seen riding up to the front of the shop before one of the men produces a hammer. He then uses it to smash a hole in the store's front door, after which he uses his foot to widen it further. The first crawls inside via the broken door, leaving his bicycle and accomplice outside. The second man can be seen keeping watch over the bikes, ensuring that they'll be ready for their getaway. One of the men is carrying a jerry can and a piece of cloth in one hand, and his intentions are clear. A few seconds later, he starts dousing the shop's counters with what's presumed to be gasoline. His face is still obscured from the cameras by the helmet that he's wearing, but it seems that he's struggling to remain calm, and at one point he drops the jerry can. After retrieving it, he uses a cigarette lighter to light a cloth that's been placed inside the can. But at this moment, things go horribly wrong, as not only the cloth and can are engulfed in flames, but the man's clothing also catches fire. His accomplice, who's still waiting outside, suddenly realizes what's happening, but he's seemingly frozen in the spot where he's waiting, likely in shock over what he's seeing. Meanwhile, the fire inside the shop has started to spread, and CCTV cameras outside the shop show the flames growing higher. The man manages to make his way back outside via the hole that's been punched in the glass door, and once he's back with his accomplice, he starts rolling around on the ground in an attempt to smother the flames on the front of his jacket. His friend eventually springs into action and helps pat down the flames before calmly walking over to his bike. The first man, seemingly uninjured, manages to pick up his bike, and in just a few seconds they disappear from the camera's view as they make their escape. It's uncertain whether the pair knew this, but the barbershop is situated directly underneath a 24-hour gym where people were working out at the time. Luckily, no one was injured as they were evacuated in time, but had the fire spread any faster, the situation could have been far worse. An inspector with the police reiterated that the arsonist was equally as lucky since he seemed to have escaped the attack without suffering any injury. Had he not had the help of his friend nor the presence of mind to run outside to roll on the ground, it's likely he would have struggled to smother the flames and may have been seriously injured or worse. Investigators later released a statement in which they said that this was likely a targeted attack, since several other barbershops were also attacked in the weeks leading up to the incident, though the motive for these crimes has not yet been established. Damage to the building is estimated to be as high as $30,000, but the owner, Yusuf Hussein, has stated that the attack will not stop him from doing business, since he refuses to be intimidated by anyone, though he has expressed concerns for the safety of his family. The investigation into this case is still ongoing, and anyone who has information is asked to contact the Canberra police by dialing the emergency number 000 or the police assist line at 131-444. A 42-year-old Australian woman named Lauren Whitehead mysteriously disappeared on Friday, the 8th of February 2013. And since then, her family has repeatedly asked for anyone with information on her whereabouts to come forward. But she remains missing, despite her case being reinvestigated in 2025. Her daughter, 33-year-old Amelia Grozdanovsky, has never given up hope that her mother will be found one day, despite the fact that it's been 12 years since Lauren was last seen on CCTV footage. At the time, Lauren was working as a debit and credit agent, and her coworkers described her as someone who took her role very seriously. Hence, when she failed to arrive for her shift the following Monday, they were perplexed, since it was very out of character for her to not inform her boss if she was going to be late or couldn't make it to work. Her boss became concerned for her well-being and contacted Amelia to ask if she knew where her mother was. Amelia immediately traveled to Lorraine's house to check up on her, but when she arrived, she was surprised to find the house's garage unlocked. Stranger still was the fact that the house's front door was left unlocked, and she immediately started to feel that something was wrong, but she decided to investigate inside the house before jumping to conclusions. Inside, her suspicions became far worse when she found that a glass fruit bowl had been smashed on the floor, and beside it she found a few peaches that had already started to go moldy. She knew that Lauren never left the house unlocked, and she started to worry that her mother may have been the victim of foul play. The scene made her very uncomfortable, and she later told the police that in her gut she knew something was not right. She ventured further into the house and came across a scene that made her heart stop. She discovered that paint drop cloths had been spread on the ground in one of the rooms, as if someone had attempted to keep the house as clean as possible while committing a crime. Furthermore, she found Lauren's purse, work phone, and diabetes medication strewn across her bed. This was a particularly distressing detail, since her mother needed to take her medication every day thanks to her life-threatening condition. Amelia also discovered that Lauren's work laptop was missing, along with her personal cell phone. She called the police, who raced to the scene, and an investigation was immediately launched. She told investigators that her mom was happy at the time of her disappearance, and that she wouldn't have simply left of her own volition without informing her family where she was going. It was also revealed that Lauren had recently won her battle against cancer and become a member of a photography group. She was in the process of obtaining her passport, since she had plans to travel to Fiji, Singapore, and Europe via a cruise. She had also made plans with Amelia to go on a mother-daughter trip, further leading Amelia and investigators to believe that Lauren hadn't decided to leave on her own, and that the case likely had a more sinister explanation. An appeal was made to the public for anyone who'd spotted Lauren in the days before her disappearance to come forward, and soon investigators were made aware of CCTV footage showing her doing some shopping in Bannockburn on the day that she vanished. In the footage, she can be seen buying a bottle of water, a pen, and a card before leaving the store. A witness would later come forward to report that they'd seen her getting into a red four-wheel drive vehicle, which then left the scene. Another witness would state that they'd seen the same vehicle at Lauren's house during the weekend when she disappeared, but they were unable to say who was driving it. But it was confirmed that Lauren didn't own a red four-wheel drive vehicle, and despite appeals to the public, neither the car nor its owner have been identified. The already complex case became even stranger a few days after Lauren disappeared, when Amelia's stepfather found a suspicious envelope in his mailbox. It was addressed to Lauren's children, and when they opened it, they found that it contained a greeting card. The inside of the card did not contain any handwritten message, but did have the words, "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened," printed on the inside. The envelope did, however, contain handwriting, and it was sent to be analyzed. Unfortunately, handwriting experts were unable to ascertain whether the writing was done by Lauren, and to this day, no one is certain who left the card where it was found, or why it was left there anonymously. It's also not been established whether the card has anything to do with Lauren's disappearance, but many people find it suspicious that she was buying a pen and a card immediately before she disappeared, only for a card addressed to her children to show up a few days later. Unfortunately, no further clues were found during the initial investigation, and Lauren's case went cold. In the years that followed, investigators interviewed hundreds of people, but they received very few leads, and soon hope started to fade that the case would be solved. That is, until January of 2025, when the police made a fresh appeal to the public for any information on Lauren's disappearance. And this time, they received information that her remains may be in a section of bushland located near Shelford. The identity of the person who provided this information has not been made public, and investigators have declined to say why they believe this theory could be correct. They did, however, reveal that they were looking for items of interest in the area and had not ruled out the possibility that Lauren could be found during the search. They did state that the area that was being searched sees a lot of foot traffic, and hence the evidence that was once there may have been unintentionally removed or destroyed by pedestrians. Lauren's bank accounts have been monitored for the 12 years since her disappearance, but they've not seen any activity since the day that she made the purchases in the store where she was last seen. One of the lead investigators in the case stated that he's certain someone knows what happened to Lauren that day, and once again appealed to them to come forward so that the case can be brought to a close, but to date, no such information has been received. Anyone with information on Lauren's case is asked to contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-333-000. The investigation into this case is still ongoing, and all leads that are received will be followed up on. In December of 2024, 37-year-old Ronald Dumas Jr. was working as a real estate agent in Huntsville, Alabama, when he suddenly disappeared, and despite CCTV security footage being found of his last known movements, he's not been located. The timing of his disappearance is thought to be particularly strange, since Ronald is a father to 3 children and would never have missed the chance to spend Christmas with them. But unfortunately, that was the case on Christmas Day of 2024. His family have stated that they last spoke to Ronald on the 15th of December, and when they were unable to get in contact with him by the 17th, they felt that something was wrong, and they reported him as missing. But he was, however, not added to the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency's missing person list until 6 days later, on the 23rd of December, when investigators were unable to track him down. But they have stated that they don't believe his life to be in danger, or that he's a victim of foul play. This sentiment is not shared by his family, though, as they feel his disappearance is odd and completely out of character. According to them, he would never abandon his children, especially over the festive period, and would always keep in touch, letting them know what his plans were if he was planning on traveling anywhere. After Ronald was listed as a missing adult by the Huntsville Police Department, searches were undertaken and his car was discovered where it had been abandoned on the I-40 in Camden, Tennessee. Since then, it's been thoroughly searched 3 times, first by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Following this, it was again processed by the Huntsville Police Department's investigators, along with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. The third search was conducted by the Huntsville Police Department's crime scene investigators at their crime scene laboratory. The results of these searches led investigators to believe that Ronald drove the car to the area where it was found, and then left it there for reasons unknown, since no evidence of a struggle was found inside the vehicle. There were also no signs that he'd either been forced into or out of the car, which has left his family and investigators all the more perplexed, since they have no idea why he would have driven to that area, or why he would suddenly have decided to abandon his car by the side of the road. In the days that followed, investigators filed a total of 36 affidavits requesting information on Ronald's background, and so far 24 of those have been returned with some information, none of which has helped them track him down. But they were able to find CCTV footage of his last known movements. On the 15th of December, the last day that anyone had contact with him, he was captured by security cameras in a liquor store on University Drive. He can be seen walking through the store at about 10:30 p.m. that day, and when his family released images of the footage, they inexplicably stated that he was wearing a dark trench coat. But the footage clearly shows him wearing a red and plaid shirt, and it isn't known why the family stated otherwise, since the footage isn't grainy, and at no point does he have a trench coat with him. Investigators stated that he seemed very relaxed while in the store, and that he at no point seemed to be in any type of discomfort or distress. But he was seen in the store with two women, neither of whom has been identified. Investigators have appealed for the two women to come forward so that Ronald's movements after leaving the store could be traced, but they've remained elusive, and it isn't known whether they traveled with him to Camden, where his vehicle was found. While the still images from the store's CCTV cameras have been released to the public by Ronald's family, investigators have not released the actual footage, since the investigation is still ongoing, and hence a description of the two women is not available. A timeline of the investigation has been made available to the public, and it reads, quote, "Ronald's car was found abandoned on the 16th, a day before he was reported as missing by his family. At this point, they were unaware of the fact that he'd driven to Camden, since he was expected to spend Christmas with his children and the rest of his family." His cell phone history from that day shows that he had at some point driven on the I-40 near Jackson in Tennessee, but no further information is available as to why he traveled to that area. The following day, he was reported as missing by his family, and detectives with the Huntsville Police Department made calls to his cell phone in hopes that he would answer, but this was not the case, as all of his phones had been switched off by this point. The vehicle was towed away, and it was only on the 18th that investigators learned that his car had been found abandoned in Camden. Following this revelation, several state troopers traveled to the area close to mile marker 133, where they started a search by foot, but no sign of Ronald was found. On the 19th of December, investigators started looking for more information on the missing man, and they requested that they be given access to his cell phone records and their location history. The following day, the lead investigator traveled to Camden, where he inspected the area around mile marker 133 and inspected his vehicle in case any useful evidence had been overlooked or left behind. That same day, members of the Tennessee Highway Patrol sent state troopers to scour the area with the help of a helicopter and two members of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation in an effort to find more information on the case and to look for further clues. On the 21st of December, investigators received information from Ronald's cell phone service provider, which indicated that he was heading south from Memphis, Tennessee, before inexplicably getting out of his car and leaving it where it was eventually found. At first, Ronald's family offered a $4,500 reward to anyone who came forward with information leading to his whereabouts, but that total has since increased to $10,000, but no such information has been received. Investigators have stated that they have made some progress in the case, but reiterated that it may take some time before they're able to track Ronald down and bring his case to a close. His family has made repeated appeals to the public for information on his disappearance and made it clear that they believe he may have come to harm, or that there is some other sinister aspect to his case that's not been unearthed as of yet. Anyone who has seen Ronald or knows where he may be is urged to contact the Huntsville Police Department at 256-427-7020. 32-year-old Candace Singbell has been missing for almost 10 years, and in the years that have passed, investigators have released CCTV security footage of her last known movements. But despite this, she's never been located, and today her fate remains unknown. Her family has made several pleas to the public for information in hopes that someone would remember something from the day that she disappeared, but to no avail. They've also appealed to whoever is responsible for her disappearance to come forward so that their conscience can be cleared, but no suspects have ever been identified. The mystery started on the 26th of May, 2015, when Candace, known to her friends and family as Kay, was last seen at 1:04 a.m. riding her bicycle on 3rd Avenue in Saskatoon, Canada. She was headed in the direction of 21st Street, but shortly after she was last seen, she mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Unfortunately, it's just about certain that Kay was the victim of foul play, as Saskatoon officers revealed that the investigation into her disappearance was linked to major crimes in the area, and they released a timeline of the case as they understood it. The timeline starts on the 16th of May, 2015, 10 days before Kay went missing. This was the first time that she became active on social media and marked a good starting point for the investigation. It's also known that on Saturday, the 23rd of May, she had a conversation with her mother via text message, and she stated that she would see her that coming Tuesday, which was the 26th of May. The next day, the 24th of May, she was seen by several witnesses at 11:10 p.m. as she walked out of the Hotel Senator, which is located on 21st Street in the middle of the city's downtown area. Her movements following this sighting have baffled investigators and her family, since she'd been pushing her bicycle along the sidewalk outside the same hotel at around 1:48 a.m., which was very early in the morning for her to be doing this. Just before 5 a.m. that same morning, she texted several of her friends, and she then traveled to the Travelers Block building on 3rd Avenue, which is a building where the traveling community can make use of amenities such as showers, kitchens, and storerooms. But about an hour and a half later, she was asked to leave for reasons unknown. She was then spotted again at around 7:13 a.m. while walking into an alley close to the Avenue building, which is located on 3rd Avenue South. Kay was supposed to meet with the social worker at 8:05 that same day, but she failed to show up. But she was seen riding her bicycle on North 3rd Avenue at 8:01 that morning, and again at around 10:30 a.m., this time traveling south. Investigators have stated that surveillance footage from the area showed Kay back at the Travelers Block building at 2 o'clock that afternoon, and again at 5 p.m., though no one knows why she went back there, since she'd been asked to leave earlier that same day and would likely not have been permitted to use those facilities again. At this point, the case took a strange turn when Kay started sending text messages from a number different than her own. It's been suggested that she somehow got a new phone, and these texts continued until 6:11 p.m. that same day. At around 9:46 that night, she was once again seen walking close to the Avenue building, and her friends would report that they last saw her that night at 11:55, once again back at the Travelers Block building. In CCTV surveillance footage that's since been made available to the public, she was then seen riding her bike at 1:04 a.m. on the 26th of May, the day of her disappearance, again on 3rd Avenue. At around 4 a.m., her boyfriend started to worry about her since he hadn't seen her for a while, and he started scouring the streets in hopes that he could track her down. He eventually traveled to the Saskatoon Police Department on the 28th of May and filed a missing person report. It was then that some of the more intricate details of Kay's life were revealed. He told investigators that she'd been living on the streets for a while and that she'd been struggling with an addiction to illegal substances, despite trying very hard to kick the habit since she had 2 children, a son and a daughter who lived with her parents. By 7 a.m. on the day of her disappearance, they also received reports from people staying at the Travelers Block that Kay was missing. Her boyfriend revealed that they'd been allowed back into the Travelers Block building, and after he fell asleep, she left to go binning, which saw her trifling through garbage, donation, and recycling bins for anything of value that could be sold or traded. When he woke up, she hadn't returned, and he became concerned, leading him to search the streets for 2 days before filing a missing person report. During the resulting investigation, Kay's social media accounts were checked but found to have seen no activity. This was especially strange since she'd become somewhat addicted to her Facebook account and would usually post several times a day, sometimes as often as every hour. When her boyfriend was interviewed, he revealed that Kay may have been indebted to some unsavory characters in the illegal substance industry, and that they also found out that he'd been abusive towards her at times. In the days that followed, the areas Kay was known to frequent were thoroughly searched, and CCTV cameras were checked for her last known movements. In the last piece of footage, she's seen riding her bike, a dark-colored Supercycle Cruiser Classic with her cell phone in her left hand. No further footage of her was ever found, and it isn't known where she was heading at the time. It's been suggested that she may have been a victim of human trafficking, but investigators feel that this isn't the case, since she likely ran into the wrong people at the wrong time, resulting in her disappearance. They and her family believe that she probably came across someone to whom she owed money, and they decided to teach her a lesson. Some witnesses who were staying at the Travelers Block building later reported that they'd seen Kay sitting across the street at a bus stop, but when she spotted some people that she knew, she quickly stood up and walked away, never to be seen again. Other witnesses stated that they saw an unknown person carrying something large with a white sheet draped over it into a nearby alleyway before tossing the item into a dumpster. This resulted in a nearby landfill also being searched, but with no positive results. All further efforts to find Kay have been unsuccessful, and her case continues to frustrate investigators since no new leads have been found in the decade since she disappeared. Anyone who has information on this case is asked to urgently call the Saskatoon Police Service at 306-975-8300. People driving down the A6 in England on the morning of September 17, 2020, were shocked when they found a young woman who appeared to have fallen out of a fast-moving vehicle. 19-year-old Angel Lynn had just gone through a horrific ordeal, and 2 criminals were caught on camera. The hospital did their best, but Angel was left paralyzed with life-altering cognitive problems that doctors think will likely never fully resolve. Crime investigators turned to CCTV security footage to help get this disturbing criminal case solved. A street cam showed the terrifying events leading up to the moments she was found on the motorway. As Angel's silver van came to a stop and she crossed the road, 2 dangerous criminals were caught on camera. Moments later, a suspect in a white t-shirt ran from behind, lifted her up, and made her get back to the van. Another suspect had gotten into the driver's seat, and once Angel was back in the vehicle, he drove away. They weren't exactly the smartest criminals, and it didn't take long for police to solve the case of who these 2 dangerous men were. The man who had grabbed Angel was Che Boskill. At the time, he was Angel's boyfriend, even though Boskill's own mother would later admit that he had been controlling and coercive of Angel, and her parents described him as being potentially disturbed. On that terrible day, Angel had picked up Boskill and his friend, Rocco Sansom, and they got into an argument. The scary encounter began after Angel decided to remove herself from the situation, but Boskill would not let her escape. At some point during the kidnapping, criminal investigators determined that Angel fell, jumped, or was pushed out of the van. Her kidnappers did not stop for help, and it was only thanks to concerned bystanders springing into action that Angel's life was saved. The 2 lawbreakers were eventually arrested, and both were found guilty of kidnapping. Even though the case had been solved using CCTV evidence, they couldn't be legally convicted of causing Angel's condition, as she was unable to testify, and police couldn't find enough evidence to convince the jury that she'd been pushed out of the moving vehicle as opposed to jumping out herself. Boskill would eventually be handed 12 years in prison, but only after an appeal by Angel's family. Sansom received 21 months for his role in the kidnapping. Angel's family still does not believe that the 2 criminals got what they deserved. Angel still requires round-the-clock care, but thankfully has shown some signs of recovery, and has even managed to hug her mother. Stalking stories are scary no matter what, but especially when criminals get away instead of getting what they deserve. The constant worry of becoming an unsolved disappearance after a kidnapping is enough to make the stalker's target feel like they're stuck in a real-life horror story. In 2021, a year-long stalking campaign finally forced actress Stephanie Davis to contact police. Security camera footage played a crucial role in the criminal investigation that would put the scary person responsible behind bars. Stephanie's stalking stories started in 2020, when she was bombarded with creepy messages on social media. The bizarre messages appeared to be from a variety of different accounts, and there didn't appear to be anything she could do to stop the stalker, other than logging off of social media. But that's when her scary story became more than just an unsolved internet mystery. Stephanie received creepy letters at her home. The long, rambling letters showed the scary person who sent them was clearly obsessed with her in a crazy, criminal-like way. He claimed to be in a relationship with Stephanie and in love with her. The person responsible was unknown. The mystery of her mysterious admirer only grew worse as the letters escalated into physical gifts and flowers left on her doorstep at night. The stalker was finally caught on camera as a security system was installed. In one of the videos that was shared on social media, the criminal was caught on camera loitering around her home while Stephanie was still inside. When someone went out for an investigation, the criminal hid behind a trash bin. He was wearing a dark hooded jacket and was hiding his face. It was clear that the man on camera knew that what he was doing was wrong. Stephanie and her young son eventually moved out of their home to stay with relatives while the police investigated the case. The security camera footage would help them to finally solve the case of her stalker, who also left DNA and fingerprint evidence on the gifts and letters. Testing on the forensic evidence pointed to a man named Alex Boston. Boston was arrested and pleaded guilty to stalking. Twice he failed to show up for sentencing, apparently scared off by the media present. But his case was solved when he was eventually sentenced to 28 weeks in prison. The theft of a Vincent van Gogh painting, or Vincent van Gogh depending on what pronunciation you prefer, back in 2020 was caught on camera and made headlines around the world. Some of the biggest experts in the art crime community took to the case to try to solve one of the biggest art heists in recent history. With the help of CCTV evidence, the case was finally solved in 2021, but some mysteries about this famous art heist remain unsolved. The heist took place on March 30th, Van Gogh's 167th birthday. In the early hours of the morning, the dangerous criminal was caught on camera using a sledgehammer to break through a reinforced glass door of the Singer-Laren Museum near Amsterdam. Camera footage then showed the thief rush through the front hall, break through another glass door, and climb through into the hall where his target was being kept. It seemed as if the thief knew exactly what he was there to get and wasted no time. Moments later, he reappeared with a small painting tucked under one arm. He fled on the back of a motorbike. Afterwards, police found the painting frame abandoned outside. The stolen art piece was Van Gogh's Parsonage Garden at Noonan in Spring. It had been on loan to the museum from another gallery. The painting was made in 1884, and it wasn't one of Van Gogh's most well-known pieces. It was made while he stayed with his parents in the small village of Noonan. However, it was worth millions of dollars, and police were keen to locate the painting and the criminal who stole it. In June of 2020, Dutch art detective Arthur Brand published a photo of the painting. It had allegedly been going around in mafia circles as a proof of life image. It showed the painting beside a copy of the New York Times paper from May 30th. Presumably, this had been sent to someone who was looking to buy the painting. The source that had sent the image to the detective remained anonymous. The same art thief apparently struck again in August of 2020, when the lawbreaker broke into another museum. Despite tripping an alarm while getting through the door, by the time the police arrived, the criminal had already escaped the crime scene with another painting. Investigators decided to not make the camera footage publicly available. Both times, the criminal left behind DNA evidence for forensic testing, and it was this that would ultimately lead to his capture. In April of 2021, Dutch police announced that they had arrested a man identified only as Norm M. He was a known criminal who had previously been in prison for art heists. The criminal denied that it was him caught on CCTV cameras, but he couldn't explain how his DNA had been left at the scene of both crimes. He was found guilty and sentenced to 8 years in prison. However, by the time he was caught, both paintings had already been sold. Norm has never revealed the location of the two paintings after the heist, and it remains an unsolved mystery. Surveillance footage played a crucial role in solving the kidnapping of Carlicia Freeland Gaither. Camera footage not only caught the criminal in action, but helped police finally solve the case by tracking down their movements after the crime scene. It was late on the evening of November 2nd, 2014, when Carlicia was kidnapped. She had been visiting her godson and was on her way home when she was approached by an unknown man. They appeared to speak for a moment before the crazy criminal grabbed hold of Carlicia and started to drag her towards his car. Camera footage captured the terrifying ordeal. Carlicia fought back and tried to escape her kidnapping. Thinking quickly, Carlicia dropped her phone and glasses and smashed out the rear window of the criminal's car to help investigators identify the vehicle more easily. The events weren't enough to be able to identify either of the people involved, but Carlicia's dropped phone told police who the victim was. The criminal investigation into the case began, and Carlicia's family were informed of her mysterious disappearance. As her family put up missing person flyers in the area where she had gone missing, police released the CCTV video evidence to the media. Another important clue came when Carlicia's credit card was used to take money from an ATM. This provided police with more security camera footage supplied by the bank, which was also released to the media. They later collected more camera footage of the same criminal at a supermarket buying snacks. Not only was this all providing more images of the man that could help the public identify him, but it also gave police a clear map of where he had gone and where he could be holding Carlicia while she was kidnapped. The mystery went viral, and the scary story thankfully was seen by the right person. Law enforcement in Virginia recognized the car that the criminal was caught on camera driving and believed the unknown man was Delvin Barnes. Barnes was being investigated for another kidnapping case and seemed to match the description of the man in the security footage. They also registered a sticker on the car identifying the dealership where it had been bought. After speaking to the dealership, criminal investigators discovered another crucial piece of evidence when they learned the car had a tracking device fitted to it because Barnes had bad credit. The GPS led investigators directly to the criminal. Thankfully, Carlicia was still with him. She screamed for help as Barnes tried to escape. He was arrested and later pleaded guilty to kidnapping. He said it had started out as a robbery as he wanted money to get back to Virginia and see his daughter before handing himself in. But then the creepy case turned into something else. Carlicia was rescued and reunited with her family. Investigators praised her actions, which helped them quickly solve the case. It was a little before 8 a.m. when CCTV cameras caught Thuan Den walking down a street in Kent, England. The footage shows Den walking with one hand in his coat pocket and the other carrying a bag. The images looked innocent enough, but Den was carrying with him the criminal tools that he needed for a plot to take his ex-wife's life. Den had met his ex-wife, Leanne, in a Hong Kong refugee camp in the 1980s and married her in 1991. They moved to the UK in 94, and almost 30 years of a loveless marriage followed. Den was extremely controlling, which didn't stop after the couple divorced in 2016, but they continued living together for their children. After one argument, Den threatened to take Leanne's life if she left. When she didn't listen, the dangerous criminal attacked Leanne in an extremely disturbed manner that made Leanne take out a restraining order against her ex-husband, which was granted on March 10th of 2020. The following day, Den was caught on camera moments before his even more disturbing attack. Leanne managed a nail salon, which her husband still owned. She would typically show up for work at about 9 a.m., but shortly before her staff members arrived. When she arrived on March 11th, 2020, she heard footsteps behind her and turned to find her ex-husband. He had snuck in before her and had waited in a dark corner for her to arrive. Leanne escaped his attempts to put a rope around her, and so she took a blade with her instead. Leanne fought hard and tried to convince her criminal ex-husband not to take away their children's mother. But he didn't stop, and would have completed his chilling crime if another one of the salon workers hadn't arrived in time. Thankfully, the worker and two passers-by managed to get Den off of Leanne and called for the police. In this criminal investigation, there was little denying that what Den was caught on camera doing was criminal. But whether this attempt on her life was premeditated is debatable. Den told authorities he had intended to take his life but not hers, and that he had only come to the salon to say goodbye. However, the bag he was seen carrying in CCTV footage contained accelerants and tools to burn the place down. It seemed clear he had come to the salon to take Leanne's life and was prepared to put many more lives in danger to try to hide the evidence. He was found guilty of trying to take Leanne's life and was sentenced to 28 years in prison. Over the course of 3 months, Mark Lugo went on a crime spree, stealing artwork worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It wasn't until he was caught on camera outside of a restaurant after his last theft that he was finally apprehended. It was July 5th, 2011 when the final theft took place. Lugo was a 30-year-old wine steward living in New Jersey at the time. He had a taste for the finer things in life. That had taken him across the country to San Francisco, where he browsed artwork in the Weinstein Gallery. He looked like any other visitor to workers until he reached up and grabbed a sketch from the walls. The artwork was a piece by Picasso, and it was worth $280,000. Lugo strolled out of the gallery as if this was normal, walked past a restaurant and caught a taxi to a hotel in Napa, California. It was a similar tactic which he had used before, but this time the gallery acted too fast for Lugo. The police were immediately called and an investigation into the crime began. This was a high-profile theft and everyone in the surrounding area was on high alert. It didn't take long for the restaurant that he'd casually strolled past to contact the authorities with a CCTV clip. The taxi driver who had taken Lugo to the hotel also called the police. With the 2 pieces of information, police were able to locate Lugo, still in the hotel. The art was located, waiting to be sent back to New Jersey. Even though the artwork had been located, investigators decided to search Lugo's home. There, they found more stolen artwork hanging on display. It would turn out that the California gallery wasn't his first theft. Just 21 days earlier, Lugo had walked out of a New York hotel with 5 stolen paintings in a tote bag. A week later, he walked out of the Heli Named Gallery with more stolen artwork. Lugo's taste for the finer things in life didn't stop at art though. In April, he had twice entered a wine store in Wayne, New Jersey, and walked out with expensive alcohol without paying. After stealing 3 bottles of rare wine worth $2,000 each, he was confronted by a loss prevention officer. He was clearly captured on CCTV but denied any involvement. After his arrest, Lugo confessed to the San Francisco theft. After serving his sentence there, he was flown to New York and handed another prison sentence. A terrifying encounter with the would-be kidnapper ended with an arrest less than a day later thanks to CCTV footage. The crime took place on January 16, 2023. Bean Keeney Espresso in Auburn, Washington had been open for a little over half an hour when a man driving a Chevrolet Silverado pulled up to the drive-thru and ordered a coffee at just after 5 a.m. The barista working was alone at the time, but after 9 years working at the coffee shop, she had no worries as she made his drink. When the man pulled up to pay, he asked for change for $5. The woman got the notes without a problem and handed them over. Within seconds, the normal exchange turned into something terrifying. The man leaned out of his vehicle and grabbed the barista with one hand. With the other, he had a zip tie and a loose loop, which he tried to get over the woman's head. The woman bravely fought back and managed to pull away from the would-be kidnapper and slammed the window shut. The man drove off and the victim called the police. According to the victim, the cafe owner took worker safety very seriously. As well as a silent panic button and metal doors, there were high-quality CCTV cameras installed. Footage from the incident was handed over to the police. The footage didn't get a clear shot of his face, but his profile could be seen as he leaned out of his vehicle. More useful to police was a distinctive tattoo clearly visible on his arm. It was the word Chevrolet in an intricate design. The CCTV footage was posted online as law enforcement requested assistance identifying the man. Within hours, they had a name. 14 hours after the footage was posted online, a 38-year-old man named Matthew Darnell was arrested at his home. Darnell and his vehicle both matched the description of the man and the truck seen in the footage. The police also found zip ties in the vehicle. Darnell allegedly told officers that he wanted to hand himself in. According to the victim in this disturbing case, she had never seen Darnell before, and he had no known connection to the coffee shop, though he did own a business in the area. It seemed like the criminal had carefully selected his victim, as she was working alone at the time and was 200 pounds lighter than her attacker. In this case, the CCTV footage was essential to catching the alleged criminal as quickly as the police did, and the police thanked help from the community. This culprit was involved in a vicious attack that left an elderly woman seriously wounded, and he was caught after the police released CCTV footage of the criminal. It was days after the video footage was released that Amric Roy was arrested and faced justice for what he had done. It was shortly after 6 a.m. on March 13, 2021, that the attack took place. Penelope Katsavos was going through her normal morning routine. She arrived at her church in Melbourne to open up for the day. The 78-year-old woman had been volunteering there for 30 years. She was also a full-time carer for her husband, who suffered from dementia. At the time of the attack, Penelope was independent, though she used a shopping trolley as a mobile aid. That would change in an instant when a young man that she didn't know attacked her. The man started shouting and screaming at her before physically attacking her. Penelope collapsed and was left lying on the steps of the church while her attacker walked away with the shopping cart. CCTV footage released by the police showed the young man walking through nearby streets with the cart, apparently unconcerned about the woman he had just left unconscious. Penelope was found half an hour later by a street cleaner who called the police. The police located her shopping cart abandoned a few streets away, and her personal belongings were still inside. When CCTV footage was released, a number of people recognized the man in the video. Penelope hadn't been the first person he had attacked that morning. The man was 27-year-old Amric Roy, a student who had spent the night partying. At 4:55 a.m., he had been kicked out of a nightclub for attacking a man. As he made his way from the club to the church, he attacked 3 other people. None were as seriously injured as Penelope, who was left disheveled and mentally scarred from the event that took place. Days after the footage was released, Roy was arrested. He had mental health problems and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He claimed he had attacked Penelope to cheer himself up after the passing of his own grandmother. Roy was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Despite this, she told Roy that she forgave his actions. Qusay al-Jundi and his friend Mohammed El Aboud thought they had beaten the system when they attempted to cover their tracks after taking the life of Louise Cam in July of 2021. Unfortunately for them, many of their acts were caught on camera and allowed police to crack the case. Louise was 71 years old and was a businesswoman who owned several properties, including a 3-bedroom house in London and apartments. She had worked hard to obtain a luxurious lifestyle and was now thinking about what she was going to leave her children. She wanted to sell her properties so she could buy a house for her children. Somehow, she came into contact with Al-Jundi. He was a chef at a kebab shop, and according to a police officer working on the case, he barely had 13 pounds in his bank account. But he convinced Louise that he was well off and had a multi-millionaire girlfriend. Al-Jundi spent months befriending Louise with a plan to convince her to give control of her wealth over to him. But after several months, it became clear to Al-Jundi that this plan wasn't working. He came up with a new plan to obtain her wealth. Al-Jundi recruited his friend El Aboud in a plan to take Louise's life. He told Louise he wanted to buy her house and had the money to do so. On July 26th, Louise arrived at the house in Barnet, which was a rental property. CCTV cameras captured Louise entering the house, expecting to finalize the deal, but she would never leave. Shortly afterwards, Louise's friends and family received texts from her phone. She told them she was going abroad on vacation. The story slowly changed to Louise stealing millions of dollars from Al-Jundi, and now she had fled to China to escape law enforcement. The messages seemed extremely strange. When none of Louise's friends could get in touch with her on the phone, they contacted the police. The police searched through CCTV from where Louise was last seen, and finally at her Barnett house. They saw Al-Jundi and El Aboud leaving the property. Louise's body was found in a trash can outside of Al-Jundi's home. Cameras from this house showed it being moved in a white van, presumably from Louise's house where the crime took place. Other CCTV footage from around the area showed the two criminals leaving their place of work with cleaning supplies, and Louise's car being moved. It had been sold to an unsuspecting buyer. Where the money went was immediately obvious when looking at El Aboud's social media accounts. He had 2 videos on TikTok which revealed his crime. The first was him showing viewers around Louise's house and treating the property as his own. The second was a dance video filmed outside, where El Aboud was seen wearing clothes that he'd purchased with his ill-gotten money. Both men denied their crimes, but DNA evidence linked them to the case as well as the video footage. They were both given life sentences for their disturbing crimes. When PCSO Julia James was found in an isolated area with her dog beside her, the police were stumped for clues. An appeal for dashcam footage finally gave them the clue that led to the criminal responsible in this twisted case. Julia was a 53-year-old woman who worked as a PCSO, specializing in supporting victims of domestic violence. On the morning of April 27, 2021, she left her home in Kent to walk her Jack Russell dog, Toby. She walked through Ackholt Wood, an area that she frequently took Toby on walks through. Hours after she left the house, other walkers came across Julia's body. She'd been struck with a blunt object and left with wounds that she could not survive. Toby was found beside her body unharmed. This was a deeply personal case to many police officers, and they searched the area around Julia's body for clues. There was no CCTV in the area and no items belonging to the criminal that could point them in the right direction. Police appealed for dashcam footage or witnesses who might be able to give information that could help solve this disturbing mystery. A gamekeeper named Gavin Tucker came forward. He had been driving through the area on the morning of the crime and came across a strange individual. The encounter was caught on Gavin's dashcam footage. The young man was walking with a Tesco bag behind him. In the bag was the weapon that he would use to take Julia's life, a railway jack. Police believed this was the man responsible for the crime, but they couldn't identify him. The footage was released to the public, and eventually 22-year-old Callum Wheeler was identified. Julia did not know Wheeler, but she had met him before. A few months before the crime took place, she told her husband about a weird man lurking in the woods when she walked her dog. She came across him a second time while out walking with her husband and pointed Wheeler out to him. Her husband didn't know the man's name, but was able to give a description of him. The railway jack was found in Wheeler's home, and forensics identified DNA from the man on Julia's clothing. In the lead up to the trial, he denied any involvement in the case. The day before it was due to start, he confessed to taking Julia's life, but claimed it had been an accident. He was found guilty of intentionally taking Julia's life and will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Scary CCTV video footage from an office building in Manchester, England, has caused quite a stir, as many people believe the recordings show evidence of a poltergeist that is wreaking havoc in the building. The footage starts at around 3 a.m., while the office is completely unoccupied, and at first nothing seems out of place and the office is neat and quiet. But 1 minute into the video, strange things start to happen. The first sign of poltergeist activity comes when a camera that was recording in a corridor in the office catches a strange shadow moving across one of the walls, despite the fact that no one is in the building. A few moments later, a camera showing a different angle of the office space catches one of the computer monitors switching on without explanation. The recording switches to another camera for a second, but quickly switches back to the office, only to show that the screen has been turned off again. Not too long after, one of the office chairs, which is neatly tucked under a desk, starts to roll out by itself. It then moves away from the desk and effortlessly rolls backward down a small corridor, followed by another that is seemingly pushed up against a wall. Moments later, in the main office space, another chair starts to move of its own accord, gliding into the center of the room as if pushed by some unseen force. In another corridor, a handle of a locked door can be seen moving, as if an unseen entity is attempting to open it. Other clips of the office that have surfaced online show doors opening and closing by themselves, filing cabinet drawers opening, and papers being thrown around some of the rooms. Many people have claimed that the footage is nothing but a hoax, though many more have stated that they believe the footage to be true CCTV evidence of a poltergeist caught on camera. Creepy CCTV footage taken at the pool of a condo building in Florida has many people believing that the area has been visited by an extraterrestrial craft, as they are seemingly unable to find an alternate explanation for what was caught on camera. In August of 2013, security guard Deborah Lee Thomas was keeping an eye on CCTV surveillance systems in a condo located in Gulf Shore Boulevard. She was shocked to notice strange lights hovering over the pool in the complex, and has been left baffled by her scary experience. She told the media that she realized it was something that wasn't normal, and at first glance it looked like a saucer-shaped object. But in the next instant, the object moved into the pool and submerged itself under the water, before expanding into a web-like shape and moving back and forth. The object remained in the pool for the next half hour, before slowly starting to fade and eventually disappearing altogether. Deborah Lee showed the strange CCTV footage to some of her friends, who agreed that it does seem to show something of an extraterrestrial origin. She states that she's seen some strange things while monitoring the security camera screens over the years, but they've always turned out to be something with a reasonable explanation, such as insects walking across the camera's lens or a mere trick of the light. But she's convinced that in this case, there is no reasonable explanation. She sent the video to the Mutual UFO Network in Ohio, where it was analyzed and found to not be a hoax, though they're not certain what the lights actually are. A wildlife biologist who scrutinized the video on behalf of WBBH has also stated that it could not have been any type of animal. Many people who live in the complex have flocked to the security office to watch the footage of the weird lights, many of whom have stated that they've never seen anything like it in their lives. Deborah Lee says that she was glad to have been present to watch the entire event unfold, so that she could say that it definitely was real, and that she was able to witness it firsthand. Though many people are skeptical over the footage, no one has been able to offer a reasonable explanation for the strange lights, and for now, the creepy CCTV footage remains an unsolved mystery. Footage that was captured by a CCTV security system inside a house in Charleston, Rhode Island in October of 2020 reportedly shows a spirit playing with a soda can that has been left out on a kitchen counter in the residence. The owners of the house have stated that they have witnessed all kinds of strange activity since they moved into the home 4 years before the recorded incident. They've had incidents where they've heard inexplicable scratching noises, and at first they thought they had a rat infestation. But after the house was treated by a pest control company, the noises persisted. Strange shadows have also been seen moving throughout the building, and heavy wooden furniture has been moved around the rooms when no one is around. They've also reported being pushed by an unseen force and experiencing a strange stinging sensation in their eyes. In the footage that was taken in the house's kitchen, a small orb can be seen floating across the screen. Moments later, a soda can in the forefront of the video starts to move by itself, first rotating in place for a few seconds. It then stops, only to start rotating again a few seconds later, and then sliding across the counter to the right of the screen. As it nears the edge of the counter, it slows down and inexplicably lifts about an inch off the counter, tapping up and down several times. Adding to the mystery, a sound can then be heard that many people have claimed to be an EVP, or electronic voice phenomenon. A few moments later, a loud thud can be heard, though it isn't certain exactly where it originated from. As is usually the case with these kinds of videos, many people have claimed that it is a hoax that has been orchestrated by the owners of the house for some reason. But there are many others who believe the video is real. There's still been no definitive explanation for the creepy CCTV video footage, and for now, it remains a creepy case of CCTV footage that cannot be explained. When it comes to unexplained mysteries caught on CCTV, one video that was taken in Turkey has caused a lot of confusion and speculation, as no one seems to be sure exactly what they're looking at. In the video clip, which shows a CCTV monitor being recorded with a cell phone, a tiny creature that stands about 3 feet tall is seen moving slowly down a quiet road. After a few seconds, it stops as if hesitating, before inexplicably floating into the air and out of shot above the camera. A few seconds later, the creature floats back into the shot again, this time further down the street, where it gently lowers itself down onto the road's surface. It then walks across the street, seemingly looking around as if curious about its surroundings. It stays in the middle of the road for some time before it starts moving away from the camera into another nearby street. Here it starts to pick up its pace as it crosses the second street and eventually disappears out of sight behind a hedge. Two security guards who are watching the strange footage can be heard discussing the scene, and they are clearly baffled by what they're seeing. Since the footage has emerged, there's been much speculation as to what the creature could be and where it originated from. Due to its shape and black and white color, some people have speculated that it's a lost penguin, though this is virtually impossible as penguins can't fly and their wings are used for swimming only. Others have added that it couldn't be a penguin as the creature clearly has a humanoid shape. There have also been many people who suggested that it's an alien creature that seems to be lost. Others suggest that it may merely be a balloon that's drifting in the breeze, while others speculate that it may be a goblin-like creature that has been caught on camera. While many people are convinced that the strange footage shows something otherworldly, there are some who believe it to be a prank that has been staged to make it look like an alien creature has landed on Earth. But since the CCTV video evidence is all there is to go on, it remains an unsolved mystery. Creepy CCTV footage from a pub in Shropshire, England, has convinced the owner of the establishment and many other people who have viewed the footage that the building is being haunted by the spirits of two children. Owner Nick Bevan states that he and his assistant manager entered the pub at opening time one Sunday morning, and to their surprise, they found smashed glass on the floor behind the bar. He was worried that someone may have broken in during the night, since he knew that the place had been cleaned the night before, and so he decided to check the pub's CCTV surveillance footage. The footage shows that at 1:43 a.m., two of the glasses that are kept on a high shelf behind the bar moved of their own accord, and one by one fell to the ground where they shattered. Since he couldn't believe what he was seeing, he checked another camera to get a different angle, but he was shocked to find that it showed the exact same event with no one inside the pub. But Nick has added that it isn't the first time that they've had inexplicable activity in the pub. He states that he's felt his wrist being grabbed by an unseen hand on several occasions over the years, starting before he became the owner. But the building has a history of being haunted. The most well-known tale is of two children who lost their lives in the 16th or 17th century while playing hide-and-seek in the pub's cellar when it unexpectedly flooded and they had no way of escaping. It's believed that the spirit of the mother of the two children still haunts the location, and that she is the one responsible for the inexplicable activity. Nick decided to investigate the cellar for himself, and he was shocked to find that it contained a hole that turned out to be a well. He believes that this may be where the two children drowned all those years ago. Nick says that he's also seen strange figures walking across the bar on several occasions, but he always thought that it was just his mind playing tricks on him. Due to its reputation, the pub receives a lot of visitors who have an interest in the paranormal, and Nick believes that the new CCTV video footage will make quite the impression on those who believe the haunting tales. In 2018, a 31-year-old Chinese criminal known as Mr. Ao was apprehended thanks to CCTV footage caught on camera doing criminal activities. The way this true crime mystery was solved is very high-tech and uses the latest forensic investigation techniques. According to Chinese law, the criminal was under surveillance due to his involvement in economic crimes, which could mean many different things, as China heavily regulates the spending habits of its citizens and often requires asking the government for permission. He admitted that he had knowingly broken financial law. Whether or not his criminal confession was genuine or derived from interrogation tactics that would not be permissible in most of the world is unknown. Whatever the case may be, he did not expect to be caught in such a strange way. Organizers had set up facial recognition cameras at the ticket entrance, where more than 60,000 concert goers were ready to watch a performance by singer Jackie Chung. Mr. Ao and his wife reportedly drove 100 kilometers or 55 miles for the show, which was held in the southeastern Chinese state of Nanchang. However, he was only able to attend a few minutes of the actual show before he was caught on camera and law enforcement agents approached. Speaking to a Chinese news agency, police officer Li Zhen said that the suspect looked completely caught by surprise when we took him away. The arrest was a completely unexpected ending to Mr. Ao's vague criminal charges of financial crime. 41-year-old Eric Caples of Santa Paula, California, was a convicted felon with several counts already on his record and on parole for a year. He was a suspect in 2 active cases involving a vehicle burglary and a stolen access card. In March of 2019, the mystery was solved according to law enforcement after a criminal was caught on CCTV. Footage from a security system showed the moments the criminal was foiled, ultimately leaving without the vehicle he had targeted. Santa Paula police reviewed the footage of the attempted robbery and identified Eric Caples as the criminal suspect. Interestingly, in addition to his more recent crime stories in 2018, Eric had served a number of years in prison for vehicle theft. In 2012, he was sentenced to over 7 years for 2 felony counts, taking a vehicle and making criminal threats. According to court records on July 16th of 2011, Eric showed up uninvited at the home of a woman he had been dating and took her car without permission. He then used creepy language in text messages to threaten her and attempt to stop her from seeking the aid of law enforcement. Although he served time for his crime, he allegedly attempted a vehicle burglary again shortly after being released. CCTV footage of the suspected criminal led to accusations of him once again getting caught on camera. His current incarceration status is unknown. In January of 2022, CCTV footage from a bar in York, England, was used to help identify the location of an unusual piece of local history: the remains of Elizabeth Johnson, who was sentenced to capital punishment in 1800, more than 200 years ago. Elizabeth was convicted for the crime of putting a forged £1 note into circulation. The bill claimed to be drawn by the governor and company of the Bank of England, but it had actually been created by Elizabeth or an associate. For this offense, Elizabeth was publicly executed on August 23, 1800. Though many criminals were punished in this way, her story is notable because she was the last, and as such, her remains have become something of an attraction at the Golden Fleece, a pub that has her grinning bleached cranium on display. The owners believe that it's most likely a replica that was donated to their establishment sometime around the time of Elizabeth's actual passing. Because the replica itself is so historic, its theft in 2022 was a major concern. The mystery was eventually solved by the pub staff, working in conjunction with local police. Security footage taken at approximately 1 a.m. on January 1st, 2022, clearly showed a suspect absconding with Elizabeth's remains. When police formally launched an inquest a few days later, a young man in his 20s quickly confessed and led crime scene investigators to Elizabeth's new resting place on his mantle. By January 18th, the creepy mystery had been solved, and Elizabeth was returned to her display case in the Golden Fleece. The thief was even said to have written a letter of apology for taking the item in the first place. Overall, a fairly positive outcome for the priceless 200-year-old relic. The creepy mystery of this Ring camera footage went viral in September of 2022, when it was first recorded. Kelsey Smith, a homeowner in Portland, Oregon, captured the whole encounter on security footage. A woman crawled in through the window of her home and curled up in her son's bed. After Kelsey confronted her, the woman threw an ottoman at the startled homeowner before running off. She was apprehended a few moments later trying to break into another home just around the corner. The woman's name is Terry Lynn Zenzer, and the creepy mystery of her home invasion habit is still inexplicable. However, Terry did not stop at Kelsey's home. A few weeks later, she was found again in a nearby apartment, this time wearing the clothes of the unit's resident and sleeping in her bed. When confronted, the criminal barricaded herself in the woman's bedroom. Portland police had to use a battering ram to break down the door, and it took nearly 45 minutes. Security footage from Kelsey's home was instrumental in bringing Terry before the courts in Portland. In an unexpected ending, investigators revealed that Terry is homeless and struggles with mental health, and has a history of arrests for trespassing and theft. She's gone missing from her scheduled court cases 11 times, and has continually been released on no complaint, meaning the district attorney chooses not to pursue charges. Kelsey, the homeowner who captured Terry's unusual actions on video, is empathetic to the woman's plight, but is frustrated that she's not being held accountable for her crimes. The most recent reports in Terry's case, published in October of 2022, do indicate that she's being held on bail. Though the mystery of who's been breaking into houses has been solved, the court case will still have to determine if jail or an alternative sentence is best for her and the community at large. Chris Whitell is a well-known and well-liked resident of his San Francisco neighborhood. Friends and neighbors knew he was always available to help them with their electronics or provide a meal to someone in need. One neighbor said that just before the pandemic, Chris helped him seek medical treatment when he had an emergency, even going so far as to ride in the ambulance to the hospital with the man. The neighbor, Hargan Nelson, told reporters that he felt he owed Chris his life. So when the mild-mannered, kind Chris started acting strangely and eventually went missing in early 2021, his disappearance was a creepy mystery to the many people who loved him. In the days leading up to his mysterious disappearance, Chris was feeling paranoid. He told his sister Laura, who was based in Chicago, that he'd been hearing loud bangs and felt unsafe. He said he worried that political unrest was going to lead to a major event in San Francisco. He told Laura that he had plans to get away to the mountains before the chaos erupted. On January 8th, CCTV footage from a surveillance camera in Chris's building lobby captured him heading up the stairs to his apartment at 8:38 p.m. Chris was wearing a tan jacket, a beanie, and a face mask, and was carrying a bottle of wine. This is the last time he was ever seen. On January 9th, Chris sent his niece an alarming text message that read, quote, "Please tell Laura to check her messages, it's urgent." Laura tried to get a better picture of these scary events and replied later that day to learn more, but received no answer. For several days, Chris's family was unable to get in touch. They finally filed a missing persons report on January 11th. A week later, police conducted a routine search of Chris's apartment and didn't find him there. However, both the front and back entrances to his buildings were covered by security footage, which did not show 50-year-old Chris leaving his home at any point. The footage of Chris caught on camera in his lobby, combined with the lack of footage of him leaving, meant that forensic investigators continued to focus their searches on his building. On February 15th, more than a month later, the body of Chris was found in a small 3-foot crawl space above his bathroom. When his apartment was searched by crime scene investigators, case detectives decided that Chris could have gotten into the crawl space by dropping in through the roof. However, the San Francisco Fire Department ultimately needed to cut a hole into the ceiling to retrieve his remains. The missing person had been found, but Chris's reasons for entering the crawl space and how will likely never be fully known. Medical records did indicate that Chris passed away from substances, and evidence of this was found on his body. He also had a flashlight and pliers, which he may have intended to use to access his bathroom, or otherwise make changes to the crawl space he was at. Although the unexpected ending was ultimately not what Laura and Chris's other family may have hoped for, the CCTV footage did allow investigators to find his last resting place and bring some closure to his loved ones. When it comes to robberies, CCTV footage often determines whether the crime will ever be solved or not. When a criminal came into a grocery store in Banbury, England, demanding cash, even his full-face motorcycle helmet couldn't stop police from catching him. The robbery occurred at 8:10 p.m. on Sunday, August 12, 2022. The robber was wearing full biking leathers and a helmet to obscure his face. He told the cashier he had a weapon and demanded cash from the till. As the worker got the cash together, the criminal assured the man it would be okay, as they had insurance for this kind of thing. He got away with less than 200 pounds and fled the scene on a distinctive bright green motorcycle. The police turned to the CCTV footage from the store to try to catch the criminal. It would turn out this wasn't the first time that he had visited the co-op. Hours before the robbery, a man was seen casing out the location. This time he wasn't wearing his helmet and his face was clearly visible. CCTV footage also allowed police to trace the bike to a man named Alan Thomas who lived nearby. Thomas realized the police were closing in on him and tried to hide his involvement in the crime. He spray painted his black helmet white, an act which was also captured on CCTV. Thomas then decided that wasn't enough and gave it to a friend to dispose of. He didn't get rid of the bike though, and police found it sitting outside of his home. On September 5th, police arrived at Thomas's home to arrest him. He threatened them with a pair of scissors, but was arrested without anybody being harmed. He pleaded guilty to the robbery and to carrying the bladed weapon that he'd threatened the officers with. Police located the perpetrator of a disturbing attack with the help of CCTV footage that showed the criminal with his victim in a quiet village in the early hours of the morning. It was shortly after 6 p.m. on March 11, 2022, when the badly wounded woman was discovered. A dog walker was alerted to the woman when his dogs began acting strangely. When investigating what had upset them, he discovered the woman semi-conscious and moaning quietly in pain. The attack had happened some 3 hours earlier, and the woman had apparently been left to pass away from her wounds. Her body temperature was extremely low, and if she hadn't been found, she would have succumbed to hypothermia. Luckily, she was taken to the hospital and treated for her wounds, which were both external and internal. Footage of the woman, which was later shown to a jury, was described as extremely unpleasant. The victim thankfully survived the attack and has not been named. Unfortunately, she had no memory of what happened. Police turned to forensics and CCTV footage to try to get to the bottom of the crime. It was discovered that there were 2 crime scenes. The woman had been attacked at the side of the road, where her clothing and mobile phone were discovered. She was then dragged into the wooded area where the attack became more vicious. CCTV footage from the nearby scene of the crime showed the victim walking with a man at 3:08 a.m. They appeared to be talking, but there was no sign of any upset between them. 50 minutes after they disappeared from the view of the security camera, the man returns, walking the opposite way alone. Police then pieced together the night before the woman was found. She had visited a bar with a friend. While there, they bumped into Matthew Stevens, who was introduced through a mutual friend. Stevens and the woman hit it off and exchanged phone numbers. At one point, they got into an argument and were asked to leave. For some reason, the woman chose to get in a taxi with Stevens. While in the taxi, the driver reported that the woman said that she just wanted to go home, but Steven convinced her to go back to his place in the village of Brunswick. When they were almost there, he revealed that his mother had forbidden him from bringing women back. They got out of the taxi and began walking. It was then that they were captured on CCTV, and moments later, the violent attack occurred. Police tracked down Stevens. Jewelry belonging to his victim was found in Stevens' wardrobe and he was arrested. He claimed he just wanted to hurt her, but he was found guilty of attempting to take the woman's life and kept the jewelry as a twisted trophy. On January 29, 2017, a group of criminals broke into a storage facility in England. They got away with hundreds of extremely rare books. CCTV footage was the first link in a chain of evidence that finally led to the group's downfall. The morning after the heist, workers arrived at the warehouse to discover around 240 books and manuscripts had disappeared. The works were only meant to have been held in Feltham for a short time. They were being stored for transit to a book fair and were only set to be held for the weekend. How the thieves found out about the storage was a mystery, but how they'd gotten in was obvious. The hole had been cut in a skylight. The thieves had lowered themselves down on ropes, which meant the alarm wasn't triggered. After packing the books into holdalls which were stolen from the facility, the thieves escaped the same way. CCTV footage revealed 2 cars that police linked to the heist. The cars were connected to a group of Romanians. It was then that police realized this was much more than one heist. Between December of 2016 and April of 2019, the group committed 12 commercial burglaries. The Feltham book heist was one of those 12 and by far the most valuable. The targets in the other heists had mostly been electronics. Whatever the target, the thefts were carried out in the same way. Once the criminals had made their escapes, they then traveled back to Romania, having been flown in especially for the job. The stolen objects were usually transported back with members of the gang and sold in Europe. Stealing the books would be the downfall of the organization. Not only were these extremely valuable from a monetary standpoint, but they were actually culturally significant. The books included works by Sir Isaac Newton, Galileo, and Francisco Goya. Unlike the stolen electronics, there was a lot of pressure to get the objects back and find the thieves that were responsible. A joint operation between the British and Romanian police carefully tracked down the individual members of the gang. DNA evidence had been left behind at a number of the crime scenes. In Feltham, a metal bar had been left by the gang. Officers found a drink can at another crime scene, and a half-drunken bottle of milk at a third. Intelligence was also providing names of members of the gang, but law enforcement had to be careful. There was a fear that the group would destroy the books if they knew that law enforcement was closing in on them. On the morning of June 25, 2019, a series of raids took place. More than a dozen individuals were arrested. 13 were charged for the robberies, including the Feltham book heist, but the books themselves remained hidden. It wasn't until September of 2020 when one final raid located the books, hidden in a cement pit beneath a home in northeast Romania. Even when a suspect in a true crime case seems obvious, CCTV evidence can be crucial to making sure the culprit is put behind bars. This was the case when Adrian Cheslick was found attacked in his own home in January of 2020. Adrian was discovered by his flatmate, Emma Tozer, in the early hours of January 12. She'd come home from a night out with her sister. They were arguing as they entered the Plymouth home, then heard a strange sound from Adrian's room. There, they discovered him badly wounded. He'd been attacked with a hammer. He was rushed to the hospital and passed away a few months later. Police searched the house for clues. When they found no signs of forced entry, they believed Emma and her sister were responsible for attacking Adrian. They would soon realize that that wasn't the case. Emma had an ex-boyfriend named Anthony Brenton. They'd met on a dating app, Plenty of Fish, and had gotten on for a while, despite Emma's friends and family not being too keen on Brenton. But he became possessive and controlling, and she eventually broke it off. Brenton then spent weeks terrorizing his ex-girlfriend. He stalked her and smashed a glass balcony at her home. He was convinced she was in a relationship with Adrian, which wasn't the case. On the night of January 11th, shortly before the attack on Adrian, he called Emma twice. The calls came from an unknown number, and Emma didn't even notice the calls as she was busy dancing. Brenton became an obvious suspect, but he insisted that he'd been home the night of the attack. He later claimed he'd been out drinking with a friend. Police went through local CCTV footage and found proof that wasn't true. He was spotted walking away from Adrian and Emma's home, carrying the weapon that took Adrian's life. He discarded the weapon in the ocean, then walked into the water himself. He got rid of his shoes and some items of clothing that he was wearing and was later seen walking home wearing just his shirt. Brenton was arrested and, after seeing the CCTV evidence against him, finally pleaded guilty to his crime. On June 26, 2022, Zara Alina became the victim of a complete stranger who was determined to attack a woman that night. In less than 2 days, CCTV footage led to the arrest of the sinister individual responsible for the crime. Zara was an aspiring lawyer who had recently passed her law exams. She wanted to have a job that would allow her to provide for her family. While career-focused, she found time to hang out with friends. On the night of June 25th, she went on a night out with a group of friends. A neighbor warned Zara to take the bus home, as there'd been some creepy individuals spotted in the area, but Zara chose to walk instead. Zara enjoyed walking and knew how to do it as safely as possible. She stuck to well-lit routes with heavy traffic even at 2 a.m., the time when she was last seen walking. Like many women, she also had a system where she would message friends to let them know that she had gotten home safely. Shortly after 2 a.m., she received 2 missed calls and a message from a friend asking if she had made it home safe. By that point, she had already been attacked. Police were alerted to the crime by passers-by who heard screams and then discovered Zara. She was still alive at that point but was badly wounded. A message about the attack was sent over the police radio and was picked up by CCTV operators. CCTV operators were able to go back over the footage and locate Zara walking home. She only lived 15 minutes away from where she had left her friends, but during that time, she'd captured the attention of a creepy individual. CCTV footage showed the man following Zara for a while before disappearing into a residential area. Later, footage showed the man coming out, but Zara had been left behind. CCTV operators worked backwards with the footage to discover that this man had been on a mission to attack a woman that night. After being kicked out of a pub, he began stalking a woman who went into a shop to try to escape him. When that didn't work, she managed to run home and got inside before he came onto her street. The man then found a new victim. 3 other women were stalked but managed to get home. Then he found Zara. The images were circulated to the police and a list of potential suspects were drawn up. They were all convicts who had a history of violence. Their fingerprints were compared against a partial print found at the crime scene. A man named Jordan McSweeney was a match. He was located in a caravan where he lived on a fairground and was arrested less than 36 hours after Zara passed away in the hospital. The clothes he had worn during the attack were found dumped beneath another caravan. He was arrested and found guilty of the disturbing crime and was handed a life sentence. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.